If you're working as a health, fitness, or wellness professional and you're not using choline with your clients, I'm going to help you understand some amazing benefits that can come from supplementing with choline. But if you are using choline with your clients, I also want to make sure you understand some situations where your clients really need to reduce or stop using that choline. I think you're going to be calling some clients after this video.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So choline used to be considered one of the B vitamins, but it got kicked out of that gang for one reason or another. But choline appears to be able to be produced in the body, but it just doesn't seem to be produced enough to handle all the functions that the human body needs for choline. So we really need to bring it in from our food. And you can get choline in foods like eggs or beef or beef liver, and even cruciferous vegetables and some other sources. But it really appears that most people need to bring more in. And it has a lot of benefits. It's a building block for acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that helps our brain send signals to the body, and signals go from the body back to the brain. So that can be really important for all those kind of brain functions, like saying the right words. And choline also appears to be a cognitive enhancer, and I'll put the links in the description below for some studies that kind of indicate that that's a reality. And it also seems to be very popular to kind of keep away these age-related memory decline issues. You'll also see a lot of health professionals using it to improve issues like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and cholestasis, where that bile is really not flowing correctly or gets blocked up and creates all kinds of trouble. And this is one of the reasons that we really use choline for. We like to use it to help thin the bile out so that that bile can flow correctly. And if you haven't heard me talk about bile in the 767 other videos where I talked about bile, bile is this soapy substance that's made by the liver, and then it sends it down here, and then it's stored in the gallbladder where it's concentrated. And it's concentrated so that it can be more effective in this digestive process. So when we eat food and it gets acidified in the stomach, when it leaves the stomach, that acidic product there going into the duodenum triggers the gallbladder to squirt that alkaline bile down to help neutralize those acids. And then the bile also helps us really bust the food apart. It's this acidic stuff meeting with this alkaline bile stuff that creates this sizzle that really helps us get all the nutrients out of that food. And bile is also really important to help us emulsify or break down our dietary fats. So we need that to be able to really utilize the dietary fats that we're bringing in. And we also need the bile to be able to access fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. Those are all kind of important things. So bile becomes very important, and it's very common to have clients show up where their bile appears to be too thick and sticky to flow correctly. And there's a lot of things in our life today that can thicken up this bile and create all this trouble. So this can be very important to make sure that this is flowing, and we use choline a lot because it's very good to thin out the bile and get that bile moving better. Now for most clients, it's not going to be enough on its own. We use a lot of other steps too to thin that bile out, but choline can be a really important part of that situation, especially if the client's bile has become so thick and sticky that our normal moves are not really getting that moving. And we'll talk about those in a second. So what we want to look at with clients and whether or not they might want to be using choline is we need to look at the needs. There appear to be some genetic polymorphisms that can affect how much choline a person has the ability to bring in or to utilize. And we'll put the links to some papers in the description below if you want to dig into that a little bit more. But we also want to look at the bio-individuality of the client, because it's really important when you're working with clients to understand that there is no diet and there is no supplement that is right for every client. It does not exist. So we really, instead of looking at a client's symptoms and just looking at remedies, we want to look at the client. And if we can understand how their body is operating a little bit better, then it's a lot easier to create improvements. So when we're looking at the bio-individuality of a client, we need to understand the Bohr effect. And we all learned about the Bohr effect in the 8th grade, and then we just kind of never talked about it again. But in regards to choline, what we need to understand is that the blood pH has a very narrow range that it needs to stay within. And if it doesn't stay within that range, we just kind of die. So the body really wants to make sure that that pH stays in the right range, and it has a lot of backup moves that it can do to kind of regulate that to keep that pH in the right range. But what happens is if that blood pH starts to lean a little bit more on this alkaline side, where it's a higher pH value, if the blood leans too alkaline, then this Bohr effect kicks in. And what the Bohr effect tells us is that when the blood leans too alkaline, that oxygen can't get down to the tissues where it needs to be. And we create all these oxygen utilization issues. So it's like this alkaline blood kind of traps the oxygen there. So a doctor will put a pulse oximeter on your client and be like, oh man, your oxygen's great, way to go. But what that oximeter is not really showing them is that the oxygen can't get down to the tissues where it needs to be. So this can be a really big problem for oxygen utilization. A lot of times the client will just feel like they're just wiped out. Like before I understood all this kind of stuff, my blood pH was way too alkaline. And I had 3 steps that went up to the apartment I was living in at the time, and I had to rest halfway up those steps. So your clients might really complain about being kind of wiped out and having other issues when this blood is leaning too far on the alkaline side. So one thing I want to make sure you understand is that I'm not one of these pH gurus telling everybody, oh, you got to alkalize or we're going to be dead by Thursday. These people are kind of idiots and they're harming a lot of people. Now, there are situations where a person's blood can be leaning too far on this acidic side, and then when they take steps to alkaline this blood a little bit, then it can really improve some scenarios. But for a lot of people, it's already leaning too far on this alkaline side, and where choline comes into this is because choline appears to have the ability to push this blood more on that alkaline side. So if someone's blood is leaning too far alkaline and they take a bunch of choline, they can really magnify that problem. So what we like to do with our clients is we like to look at their breath rate to understand their bio-individuality a little bit. We look at other markers too, but in this scenario, we're going to look at the rate at which we breathe. Because when this blood is leaning too far on this alkaline side, it can be for a number of reasons. The most common reason appears to be that the CO2 in the system is low. And that can go low for a lot of reasons. Maybe somebody's not eating any carbohydrates. Maybe they're on a keto or a carnivore diet, or they're just not processing carbohydrates like you might see with a type 2 diabetic client. Because it's not just consuming carbohydrates that creates this CO2 byproduct. A person has to be able to process them correctly. So if somebody's leaning a little bit more on that insulin resistant side, they won't process those carbohydrates very well and they won't create a lot of CO2. And CO2 is just that stuff we exhale when we breathe out. It has other purposes in the body, but CO2 is acidic. So it helps to balance out the pH of that bloodstream. So if the blood's leaning too far on the alkaline side, the body will slow the rate at which we breathe in an effort to hold on to more of that CO2, so that CO2 can help acidify the blood and then balance things out a little bit so oxygen can get down to the tissues where it needs to be. So we'll look at a client's breath rate and we'll just set a timer for like a minute. And if I'm seeing a client in person, I'll tell them, oh, just lie down and relax and close your eyes. I want to check your pulse. And I'll tell them I'm just checking their pulse because I'm a big liar. But what I really want to do is watch the rate at which they breathe. And I'll just count their inhales for a minute, the number of inhales they take in that 60-second period. So I don't count inhale once and then exhale twice. I'm just counting the inhales. And if you're not seeing them in person, you can show them how to do this. I just like to lie to them if I'm seeing them in person, because if I tell them I'm going to check their breath rate, sometimes they'll be like, oh, am I breathing slow? Should I breathe faster? What am I doing? If you just tell them you're checking their pulse, they don't think about it and they'll just breathe the way that their body normally would. So this is not a diagnostic thing. I'm not a doctor. This is not a medical diagnostic tool. This just gives you some insights into how the body is probably operating. So remember, if a doctor tells somebody that, oh man, you got to take this choline, I'm not going to tell them not to do it. A client wants to do what their doctor told them to do. This just can give a person some more insights into how the body may be operating. So what we really want to see is we want to see a client's breath rate to be between about 14 and 18. That seems to be pretty ideal. And when it's going lower than that, we really don't like to see it go lower than 12, because that can be a strong indication that the blood is leaning too far on that alkaline side. And in that scenario, If a client's using choline, they would probably want to reduce that because it's magnifying the problem, it's creating these oxygen utilization issues. Now, that doesn't mean that the client wouldn't be getting all these other benefits from choline. They may really need those benefits, but they may need to reduce it until they can correct this blood pH issue and then qualify to take more choline. Because if their body can't use oxygen correctly, that's kind of a big deal. The body kind of wants to use some oxygen. And if choline is magnifying that problem, are they really getting benefits from it? Now, if a client's breath rate is greater than 19, then that can be an indication that their blood may be leaning too far on that acidic side. And then increasing choline may help them balance that out, may help push the blood a little bit more on this alkaline side and balance things out. Because if a client's breath rate is really fast, it seems to have the ability to affect the way that they're using fuel. Like they can kind of rip through it too quickly and not leave enough fuel left for the brain to function correctly, and they can create some, mental or emotional type issues. So we really don't want to see it go that high. So that may be an indication that more choline may be beneficial. But you can see that it's really about the bio-individuality of the client. It's about looking at the person and seeing where their breath rate is and getting an idea of where the pH of that blood is to see, is more choline beneficial or would less choline be more appropriate for them? And if you want to learn more about some of these tests that we have clients run on themselves to get an idea of how their body chemistry is running, my book Health Pro Results kind of walks you through how to teach clients how to do those self-tests and understand what those tests are telling you. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free and walk through those situations. And if you're a consumer that just happened upon this video because you like the topic, then you can check out my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, and chapters 3 and 4 of that book go over those same topics. And we'll put a link in the description below so you can download that for free as well. And if this helps you see that you have clients that, oh wow, they really shouldn't be using choline, but I still want them to get the benefits of that bile flow improving, that's really important, I want that to be functioning correctly, you can jump over right now and check out our video on 5 steps to help clients improve bile flow, and that'll give you some other steps you can take when choline isn't appropriate for some of your clients. I can't wait to hear about your results.